did a reloved toy sale. So coming up now for Christmas, had some brilliant, amazing quality stuff in, and then they could resell them, relove them, so it wasn't all buying new. And I bet you've got some hardly used things hiding in your cupboard somewhere as well. So that could be a great way to encourage that reuse of stuff instead of buying new. And the last one is coming up. We keep mentioning this C word, don't we, this Christmas. Lots of places have a Christmas jumper day. So this school, a school Bodnant in North Wales, they set up a Christmas jumper swap shop. So you brought in your old one and you had a token and you could exchange it for a new one. It was such a success when they did it that they've now gone online. So they take photos of the jumpers donated and have them up, and you can making it COVID safe, but also really expanding that idea. And I just think it's brilliant to support that reuse of stuff, because we don't wear our Christmas jumpers very much, do we? And similarly, another school we had set it up for Halloween outfits, but you could have it for World Book Day costumes or anything along those lines as a way to swap and share instead of rushing out and buying new. That's it from us. Diolch yn fawr iawn. I did see a couple of hands up, and I'm not sure if that's questions, so I'm going to leave that to the people in charge to if there's questions to come in, or if we're rushing on to the next stage.
Diolch yn fawr pawb. Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr, Brian a Tim. Gobeithio bod chi wedi cael lot o syniadau fyna. I hope you've had lots of ideas there of what you can be doing and making a difference in your school. So, rhai syniadau. Gwisg ysgol. Cofiwch nawr dod â'r hen gwisg ysgol mewn i'r ysgol. Bydda hwnna'n help. Hefyd, cofiwch am swapio teganau adeg Nadolig. Cyn Nadolig, teganau chi ddim yn wedi defnyddio ers bod chi'n fach, falle, bod cyfle i pobl eraill defnyddio nhw, a hefyd swapio swmperi Nadolig. So mae lot o syniadau fyna, a gobeithio newch chi wneud prosiectau gyda rheini. So, we'll just take 2 questions, if that's okay, before we go on. Ydy ysgol Bigin gyda cwestiwn? Has Bigin School got a question? Nope. Okay, we're going to move straight on then, if that's okay. Ond diolch yn fawr, Tim a Bryony, and thank you for getting us moving as well. That got us all active first thing in the morning. Nawr te, mae lot ohonoch chi, lot o ysgolion wedi wneud ymdrech mawr eisoes gyda'r amgylchedd, ac un o'r pethau ni eisiau dangos yw'r ffordd mae un ysgol yn arbennig wedi wneud I gwaith nhw I helpu gyda'r amgylchedd. So lots of schools have helped, and this is the Ysgol Gymunedol Banc Photosynthesis, and they've made a video of what they've done to help the environment.
Shwmae bawb! Disgyblion Ysgol Bangor Felen ydyn ni.
Neu Ysgol Bach, yn ei gael. Ysgol Bach Wledig yn Gwm Pendraeth, Sir Gaerfyrddin I Ysgol Bangor Felen. Sir sy'n llawn arwer, chwedlau, mynesiad,
Rydym ni yn Sir Garwyr sy'n barod I gydweithio heddiw
paratoi am model gwyrdd y fori.
We are pupils of Bangor Felen School.
Or Bank School, as some call it. Bankfos Felen School is a small rural school in the Gwendraeth Valley in the county of Carmarthenshire. A county full of
Heroes,
myth, legends,
stories, castles,
and welcoming residents.
We in Carmarthenshire are ready to do our best
to prepare today for tomorrow's green future.
Our world.
I am the murderous veil, choking the earth as I grow. am the killing machine, destroying hundreds of trees. I am the crawling creature, infecting everything I touch. I am the darkness, covering the Amazon with glee. I am the slaying machine, destroying hundreds of habitats. I am the suffocating blanket, heating up the earth. I am the endangered animal, crying if my home is destroyed. I am the evil killer that no one can see. We are the fighting army, gathering knowledge and hope. We are the solution, saying that we can understand. We are the answer, saving the world for all. We are the warriors, battling the ongoing war. We are the champions, recycling, reusing, repairing. We are the defenders, looking to the future. We are the team, protecting the world. We are the heroes, rescuing Earth from its enemy.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch yn fawr iawn i'r ysgol am wneud gymaint o ymdrech. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm so sure some... Can we say thank you? Should we all give a big clap to the school? Diolch yn fawr iawn. That's excellent. Now then, let's have a quick chat before we get our next guest in, just to ask you, what challenge are you going to take up that you've heard so far? Can anyone put their hand up? Who is going to do the Christmas jumper challenge? Bring in their Christmas jumpers into school. Dwylo lan, hands up. Yeah, who's got a Christmas jumper? Who'd like a new Christmas jumper, but not really a new one, but a swapsy? There we go. Now then, should we try and organize that? Is that a good idea? Because it's almost Christmas jumper time, isn't it? That's great. Okay, and what about Christmas? Who likes lots of toys at Christmas? Yeah. Now then, who wouldn't mind if they had a second-hand toy rather than a brand new toy? Wouldn't mind. That's excellent. Now you make sure that you discuss that with all your family and that everybody knows, you know what, the environment really matters. Now, who likes to go shopping? Hands up. Now then, who thinks we should do a little bit less shopping if we only use things once? Da iawn. Great. Well, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. Thank you very much. Now, we now have a very special guest, and this is Sophie Howe. Now, she has a very important job. She is the first ever Future Generations Commissioner. Now, what does that mean? What does she do? Well, let's hand over to Sophie now, and she can tell us all about her job and what she tries to achieve with her job. And I know that Sophie's also been to COP, which is this big event that you've all just heard of, where they try to say how we're going to really get a better planet for your future. So Sophie, diolch yn fawr am ymuno gyda ni. Thanks for joining us.
Bore da pawb, bore da Lynette. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to see all of your faces here, and that there's so many people on this call discussing what we can do for the climate and what we can do individually, but also what we can do in our schools, in our communities, what people like Eluned can do in government to try to make sure that we're going to have a really safe planet for all of you to live on when you're older, and perhaps when you have children and when your children have children. And Wales is really, really committed to this. They're so committed that we are the only country in the whole world that has passed a law which says that all of our politicians, when they're taking decisions, when they're deciding how to spend their money and do different things, that they've got to think about how that's going to affect future generations. So future generations are people like you, younger people. They're also people who are not even born yet. So here's an interesting fact for you. If we look 50,000 years to the past, there've been about 100 billion people. That's a massive number, isn't it? 100 billion people who have been alive but are now dead. At the moment, there's about 7.7 billion people living on planet Earth, currently alive. But if we look 50,000 years to the future, who can have a guess? Pop it in the chat at how many people might be alive during 50,000 years in the future. And I'm telling you, it's got a lot of noughts on it. Can anyone post in the chat? Right, 20 billion. It's good. Higher though, higher. Any other guesses? 28 billion, higher again. We'll have one more guess, 43 billion. Okay, I'm going to tell you, it's 100 billion. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. There's going to be 6.75 trillion people alive. That's based on the current birth rate. 6.75 trillion people alive in the next 50,000 years. So the things that we're doing today, the decisions that we're taking, the little actions that you're doing in your school, that I'm doing, that the government's doing, are going to affect the lives of 6.75 trillion people. So that makes us have a huge responsibility in terms of what we do. And the problem with lots of governments in other parts of the world is that they're not really thinking about those 6.75 trillion people. They're only thinking about the 7.7 billion that are alive now. And of course, those 7.7 billion are really important. That's us, that's all of us here. But we've also got to look at how our actions affect other people. And I think in the past, perhaps we haven't been particularly good at that. Because back in 1990, when I was, so how old would I have been in 1990? I would have been about 13 in 1990. That's when we first knew that there was going to be a problem with climate change. And that's when we first knew that the way in which we were taking actions was creating global warming. And we haven't really done enough to stop that happening. And like Eluned said, that's why I was in a big conference last week called COP in Glasgow, which you might have seen on the news. And there we were discussing with world leaders, how is the whole world going to come together to try to stop global warming? And it's my job. So I'm not a minister like Eluned. Eluned has the really, really difficult job of taking some really, really difficult decisions in government around health and keeping us all safe. But my job really is to speak out on behalf of future generations. So you might have met the Children's Commissioner, and I work closely with her. But my job is to speak out on behalf of your futures, but also to speak out on behalf of those who are yet to be born. Now that's a bit difficult because they don't speak to me very often, the people who aren't born. So I have to try and work out what the priorities are for those people. So, Dilys, you were in COP, I can see. That's amazing. I'd like to hear more. I'd like to hear more about that. What I would like you to do is to post in the chat, or if you want to, I don't know if people are able to contribute verbally, Eluned. I'm not sure if we're doing that. I'd like you to tell me what you think. People who are not yet born, what do you think that they would be thinking the most important decisions for us to take are today to make sure that that they're going to live a happy, healthy, safe life on a safe planet? Can anyone help me out on what you think that might be? You're all having a think. Oh, be plastic free. Yeah, make sure the world continues. Stop global warming. These are all really good ones. Any more? Keep the oceans clean. Yeah. No fossil fuels. Stop pollution. Plant trees. Clean air. You're absolutely right. I think all of those things, electric cars, stop diesel cars, I think all of those things are things that those people who are yet to be born would say that we need to start doing and acting on now to make sure that they've got a safe planet. The other thing, though, is that part of my job is trying to get people to understand that everything's connected to everything. So some of those things that we've got that you've put in the chat there, we've got equality, that's really good. Travel less on fuel, yeah. What things, if we don't do those things, it affects the planet, but can anyone think what else could it affect? Anyone going to have a go? Oh, someone's brilliant. Grow our own food. I love that. People, animals, yeah, absolutely right. Us, that's absolutely right, because at the moment, many of us are living in areas of high air pollution because of all of the fossil fuels and the pollution from cars. Some people, particularly if you live in an urban area, they don't really have access to nature. Sometimes we're not eating good quality food, but we're not using the food which is grown locally. So if we do all of these things that you've put in the chat there, and you're absolutely quite right, all the things that we need to do to help the planet, they're actually really good to help us as humans, to help our health and well-being as well. We're going to be much healthier if we walk to school and walk to work and cycle to work and do all of those things than if we just get in our cars. And we're going to be creating less pollution. We're going to be much healthier if we, who likes to have burgers as a treat every now and then, maybe from McDonald's. Yeah, quite lots of you. That's okay if it's a treat and a one-off, but we're going to be much healthier if we eat locally produced food, if we're eating more vegetables. Who likes vegetables? I love vegetables. Yeah, there we are. And who gets lots of vegetables in their school dinners? Yeah, brilliant. I can see lots of hands up there. That's great. So what you're doing there is not just good for the planet, but it's good for your health as well. And if we can make sure that our younger generations and those who are coming on as the next generation are doing all of those things, then we're going to have happier and healthier people and a happier and healthier planet. Make healthy food less expensive. That's a really good point, and there's lots of ways to do that. So my job really is to try to tell government the things that they should be doing to make those connections between human health and the health of our world, to make sure that we're thinking about how do we address inequality, to make sure that we've got good homes to live in, and to make sure that the decisions that we take are kind of fit for the future. So that's what my job is all about. And as I said, Wales is the only country in the world that has someone doing a job like that. So I think you can be quite proud of what Wales is doing. Now then, I'm wondering if we have got any questions.
We've definitely got some questions.
Okay.
My question, Gadani, or Keegan. Have we got Keegan from Ysgol y Banau who wanted to ask a question to Sophie? Can you unmute, Keegan?
Yeah. So my question is, what inspired you to become the Future Generation Commissioner?
Great question, Keegan. Okay. So I've done lots of different jobs in the past. I've been a local councillor. I've worked in the Welsh Government where Eluned is now. I've worked in the police. And I've seen the way that lots of different things, lots of different public organisations take decisions and how they affect communities. When I was little, I grew up in a community that in some ways was lovely, but in other ways wasn't very nice. Lots of people in that area were quite poor. Lots of people didn't have jobs. There wasn't really much access to nature, because just at the end of my street, there used to be something called the Drope, and that was all open fields. And I used to go playing there when I was a little girl, but then it got built on. And all of those things, I think I take with me now to think, how can we do that better? And how can we get our governments to do things better? So I'm really passionate about how we can do better things and how we can do that in a future focused way. And also, I've got 5 children myself, and so I'm a mum, and I think every mum wants to make sure that their kids have the best possible future. So that's kind of why I wanted to do it. It was about seeing what I saw in my community, being a bit frustrated in all the different organisations I've worked in about how sometimes we don't do the right things, and being a mum.
Great.
Thank you very
much. Diolch yn fawr, Sophie. We're going to now go to Ysgol Biggin School in Llanelli.
Bore da, Ysgol Biggin. Who's going to ask their question?
Have we got Cody? No, is there someone there from Biggin, Ysgol Biggin? There we are.
Hello.
Morning, bore da.
I'd like to ask a question. How will the COP26 summit affect or help Wales in particular?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, sorry, are you Cody? Is it you, Cody? Yeah? Or was someone else asking then?
It might be to turn.
Right, okay. So COP26, how is it going to help Wales? Well, first off, the thing with the environment is that it doesn't really stop at the boundaries of our countries, does it? So we can't just take decisions in isolation on our own in individual countries, because the environment, you know, is the whole world. So we've got to get the whole world on board. So whatever the rest of the world is doing to keep global temperatures down will have a direct impact on Wales. And some of the things that we're hoping keeping those global temperatures down will be to stop flooding in Wales, and certainly not to increase it. So some of the work that my office has done is working with a school in Llanrwst, which is in North Wales, and they've been really hard hit by flooding, and you might know communities as well as being hard hit by flooding. So if we keep those global temperatures down, that will be, an important effect of that. The other thing, I suppose, is kind of how we get lots of new money to try to do all of the things that we want to do, and the things that you've put on in the chat there. So things like, how are we going to get the charging points for our electric vehicles? How are we going to get investment for those sorts of things? How are we going to get investment in public transport? How are we going to get investment in things like renewable energy, so wind farms and solar panels and these sorts of things? So those things cost money, and a lot of the discussions at COP were with the big businesses who can help to fund some of those things, as well as countries contributing funding themselves, particularly for poorer countries. I think that the other thing that COP can do is, to help give the message from Wales about the brilliant things that we are doing. So I told you we're the only country in the world that's passed a law to protect future generations. And something that I've been doing then is talking to lots of different countries and saying, how can your country adopt a similar law? Yesterday, I was with the German ambassador talking about our law, and I've been doing a lot of work with the United Nations, and the United Nations are an organization that kind of work with every country in the world to get them to. So the United Nations ran the COP climate change conference. And the United Nations, the head of the United Nations is someone called the Secretary General. And the Secretary General has been working with my office, and he has agreed that the United Nations should have a Future Generations Commissioner. So that is Wales. And we're quite a small country, just around 3 million people. And we are influencing what the rest of the world is doing. And if the United Nations have a Future Generations Commissioner, and if they make sure that the way that they're taking decisions is considering future generations, then it's likely that lots of other countries will follow our lead. And that's Wales changing the world.
Diolch. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Sophie,
Yeah.
I'm just going to take 2 more questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Some of you won't have a chance to ask questions to Sophie, but we've got another guest, Julie James, who can maybe take up some of the questions as well. But I'm going to ask Tafarn Spite now. Ysgol Tafarn Spite.
Bore da.
Bore da. I'm just going to hand you over to Rafa, if that's okay.
Hey.
Raphael. Diolch. I'll just put the video on. Okay, Raf?
Bore da.
Bore da, Raf. How are you? Ti'n iawn?
Yeah. Yeah, good. We were asking if there would be an alternative to plastic in the future.
Yeah, really good. So there are lots of scientists working on this, and one thing that I've seen recently is something like a so who likes fidgets? Who's into fidgets? Yeah,
Lots of them.
yeah, okay. Yeah, a bit like that. Some of you, yeah. Oh, I can see lots of hands up. Yeah, I've got lots of fidgets in my house as well, but they bother me because there's a lot of plastic. But does anyone know those fidgets, which are kind of like those water sausages, and they wiggle around? And,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you know those. Okay, so I've seen scientists developing something which is not plastic. It's biodegradable. That means it doesn't stay in the earth for a very long time. Instead of and they're little bubbles that you can pop in your mouth, and in them are water. So we buy millions and millions of like bottles of water every year, and that's plastic. Instead, we can buy these little bubbles and pop them in our mouth, and that gives us a drink on the go. And there's lots and lots of other things that I've seen. Something really, which I thought was really clever about cleaning up the ocean, which is being developed by some scientists in Germany. They have developed it's something kind of like it's like a bit of a sea monster, if you like, but it starts off tiny, and it sucks up, it goes into the sea, and it sucks up all the microplastics onto it. So it kind of just becomes a big microplastic monster. And that then, the idea is that you should be then able to take that out of the sea like that with all the microplastics attached to it. So they haven't got it like fully worked out yet, but there's loads of exciting things like that happening. So to answer your question, Raf, do I think that we'll be able to find something completely different to plastic? Yes, I do.
Thanks.
Oh, diolch.
Great.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Great. I'm going to take one last question before we have a little break. Is that okay? So I'm going to ask Dilys Ellis Jones's school. And is that okay?
Yes.
Great.
Bore da, girls.
Bore da.
Boys. Sorry. I couldn't see you with your hat there.
So we have a question. It's how do you travel to places without ruining the environment?
Oh, that's a really good one. So unlike a certain Prime Minister, who's not the Prime Minister of Wales, but is a Prime Minister not that far away, who travelled to the climate conference on a plane, that's not very good, I don't think. I went on the train. So I use the train a lot. Do you use the train?
Yeah, when I went to conference of Party 26, we went on the train too.
Excellent. That's brilliant. And so if you ever need to go to a conference in Glasgow or in Scotland, there's something called the sleeper train. Who's seen Harry Potter?
Me.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really cool because it's like a Harry Potter train, and it's got all these compartments, and you can go, and it leaves London at midnight, and there are beds in there, and you go to sleep on the train, and when you wake up, there you are, you're in Scotland. So that was really cool. So that's what I went on. When I'm going places in the area that I live, I mostly try and get the bus. Sometimes in the nice weather, I'll cycle into work, but I've also got an electric car, because sometimes I have to take my children to, like your mums and dads, to football and rugby and gymnastics and all of these things. And so I use an electric car then.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Now, I know there's lots of other schools who want to ask questions, but we're going to save Llangos to ask a question for Julie James, who will be joining us very shortly. And if somebody can let her in, that will be very useful. So, diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. Can I say thank you very much to Sophie for joining us today? Diolch yn fawr iawn, and thank you for everything you're doing for the next generation. Pob un gweud goodbye, Sophie. Diolch yn fawr iawn, and thank you for helping us save the planet.
Oh, bye.
Lovely to see you all.
We're gonna have just a 10-minute break now. Is that okay? We'll come back at 11:15. So you can go and stretch your legs and nôl fan hyn am chwarter wedi 11, okay? Diolch yn fawr.
Hello? Wait, hello?
Oh. Helo, chi'n clywed fi? Hello, can you hear me? Ydych chi'n gweld fi? Na. There we go. The host has stopped my video for some reason. There we go. Well, dyma ni. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much. I hope you had a little break there. Now then, we're very, very privileged today to be joined by Julie James, who is the Minister in the Welsh Government, who is responsible for climate change, but for looking after our planet, and in particular, what Wales does in relation to our planet. Now then, Julie has also just come back from that very important COP meeting that we've talked so much about, and she has given us a great, she's been really leading the charge here in Wales. Now then, before we do that, what we're going to do is we are going to listen to Greta Thornberg, who so many of you I know have heard a little bit about.
This is not a drill. My name is Greta Thornberg. We are living in the beginning of a mass extinction. Our climate is breaking down. Children like me are giving up their education to protest. But we can still fix this. You can still fix this. To survive, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. But this alone will not be enough. Lots of solutions are talked about. But what about a solution that is right in front of us? I'll let my friend George explain.
There is a magic machine that sucks carbon out of the air, costs very little, and builds itself. It's called a tree. A tree is an example of a natural climate solution. Mangroves, peat bogs, jungles, marshes, seabeds, kelp forests, swamps, coral reefs, they take carbon out of the air and lock it away. Nature is a tool we can use to repair our broken climate. These natural climate solutions could make a massive difference.
Pretty cool, right?
But only if we also leave fossil fuels in the ground.
Here's the crazy part. Right now, we are ignoring them. We spend 1,000 times more on global fossil fuel subsidies than on natural-based solutions.
Natural climate solutions get just 2% of all the money used on tackling climate breakdown.
This is your money. It is your taxes and your savings.
Even more crazy, right now when we need nature the most, we're destroying it faster than ever.
Up to 200 species are going extinct every single day.
Much of the Arctic ice is gone. Most of our wild animals have gone. Much of our soil has gone.
So what should we do?
What should you do?
It's simple. We need to protect, restore, and fund. Protect. Tropical forests are being cut down at the rate of 30 football pitches a minute.
Where nature is doing something vital, we must protect it.
Restore. Much of our planet has been damaged.
But nature can regenerate, and we can help ecosystems bounce back.
Fund.
We need to stop funding things that destroy nature and pay for things that help it.
It is that simple. Protect, restore, fund.
This can happen everywhere. Many people have already begun using natural climate solutions. We need to do it on a massive scale.
You can be part of this.
Vote for people who defend nature.
Share this video. Talk about this.
All around the world, there are amazing movements fighting for nature. Join them.
Everything counts. What you do counts.
Now there we are. That shows you what one young girl managed to do to get lots of people animated and engaged in the climate change agenda. Now I'm really delighted that Julie James has joined us. Julie, can you tell us a little bit about why your job is so important and what these young people can do to help you with your job?
Yeah, great. It's really, really lovely to be here with you all. That's an incredibly powerful video, isn't it? And one of the things I'm delighted to be able to tell you all is that one of the reasons that it's a powerful video is because Wales is very much part of that movement. So Wales is a very small nation really in the scheme of things, but we have done an enormous number of things that are asked for in that video. So we have already banned fossil fuels. We have already signed up to the Beyond Oil and Gas alliances of nations across the world. We are already funding natural restoration across Wales, and you all can really help us with that. So you all can help by using as few things as possible that are made of plastic. You can make sure that you ask in your supermarkets for things that are not covered in plastic when you buy them. You can make sure that your school has the right kinds of purchasing to make sure that they're not buying things that they want, and the Government of Wales will help you. Eluned, I know, is doing the same thing in the health service to make sure that the health service swaps its practices. And at the same time, we're also helping all of you plant trees. We're helping restore some of the marine environment, the kelp forests and the seagrass forests that help us suck the carbon out of the air, as George showed you in that video. We're going to plant very many more trees in the next 2 years than we have ever done before in Wales. We're going to be restoring a large part of what will become the national forest. So our ambition is that people will be able to walk from each end of Wales to the other end of Wales inside a forest. So we will be able to do that very soon. By the time you're my age, you will absolutely be able to do that. So there's lots and lots of things we can do, but we also don't have all the answers. What we really want to do as well is find out from you, as you do your work in school, what you think the answers are and help you put them into practice as well. So we want to work with all of you and with all of the people across Wales, with our young people and also with our scientists and our farmers and our landowners, land managers, to make sure that we do the right thing. I've been engaged in doing this since I was your age, actually, growing up in northern Canada. So it makes a huge difference what individuals do. So it really, really matters that each one of you cares about it, as Greta says, and then together we can make a real difference. Lynn, and I'm really happy to answer questions. I think that's probably the best thing to do rather than me just talk at everyone.
That's great. Thank you so much, Julie. And I know there are lots of questions. So we're going to start with Llangor School, if you don't mind. Someone from Llangor School, can you ask a question to Julie?
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
What are you able to do about plastic in the ocean for the future?
So what we're going to do in Wales is we're going to ban a big list of single-use plastics. So things like, you know, those terrible little straws that you sometimes get given. Already people get have stopped giving out plastic straws and are getting paper straws instead. I don't know if you've noticed that yet. If you go to one of the fast food places and buy a drink, you get a paper straw these days. So that's in anticipation of us about to ban them. The things that you stir coffee with, there's a whole range of them, single-use carrier bags and so on. We're going to ban all of them. And the reason we're doing that is they're made and then they're thrown away. And in throwing them away, they get into the ocean. So they break down into little tiny microparticles and then get washed out into the ocean. The other thing we're going to be doing is working with our manufacturers across Wales to do something called, sorry for the jargon, but extended producer responsibility. That means making the people who produce the plastic responsible for it. So making them pay to dispose of it correctly, recycle it where we can, make it into other things. We already have enough plastic in the world to keep us going with plastic products forever and ever and ever. We don't need to make more. So making sure that we do that will be really important in the future. And all of you can help, because the less of those things you buy, the less pressure there is on the producers to produce it.
That's great. Diolch yn fawr, Julie. If you've got any questions, if you can put that in the chat, and we'll call you. So if you want if you want to ask a question, but I know there was a question that had been prepared earlier by Ysgol y Bana, and I wondered if Rafferty could ask you a question. Rafferty, chi yna?
Yeah, yeah, Nesta's going to step in for Rafferty, if that's okay.
Okay, dim problem.
Okay. Beth ydych chi'n gwneud I leihau gor-defnydd o gludiant fel ceir ac awenau? What are you doing to reduce the overuse of transport, such as cars and aeroplanes?
Yeah, so what we need to do there is 3 different things. We need to make sure that we don't build roads unnecessarily. So we've already announced that we're reviewing all road building schemes across Wales. We're going to put a lot more money into public transport so that you will be much more convenient and easier for you to get a bus than it is to get in your car. And we're also making sure that people have broadband available to them right through Wales. So actually they don't need to travel for work. They'll still need and want to travel to get together socially and to do the things we all want to do together. But you don't need to just make journeys to go to the office. You'll be able to do that from home or from a hub near your home if your home isn't big enough or suitable for that. So we're doing quite a lot of work to make sure that people don't have to travel to do day-to-day things, and that the places that they live in have all of the services that they need around them to make sure that they can live very comfortably there.
That's great. Thank you, Julie. We have another one from Scrinkle Haven. Is that someone in Scrinkle Haven can ask a question?
Diolch.
Okay, Scrinkle Haven, pwy sy'n mynd I ofyn a question? Who's going to ask the question? There we go. Who's that in the front? You'll have to shout. Shout.
How do you feel about how sustainable Wales is so far?
Yeah, so we're doing okay so far, but we need to do an awful lot more. So we've done quite well in the last 30 years. We've reduced our carbon footprint by 38% over the last few years. We've mostly done that by shutting our coal-fired fuel stations, so the things that make electricity. We used to power that with coal. We've stopped doing that because that's a very dirty way of doing it. But we need to do twice as much in the next 10 years than we have in the last 30. So we've got a lot further to go, but we're determined to do it. And you all can help us by making sure that you all do the right things as well. But we'll be helping people do it. So we'll be helping put money into people's pockets to help them do the right thing by, for example, swapping away from gas-fired central heating, changing to electric cars and so on. I can see that somebody's put in the chat, can we help people buy electric cars? We will have schemes to help people buy electric cars, but I have to say something quite radical to you. One of the things we will have to do is consider that not everybody needs a new car every 3 years, that the model that we currently have for car ownership is using up a huge amount of the world's resources. So we can't all have a brand new car every 3 years and think that the planet will be okay. So we'll have to come up with new ways of doing that, ways of owning a car between groups of families or between groups of people to do that as well. And you guys will be the people who have all the ideas for how to do that.
Great. I know there was some very enthusiastic children from Mark Williams's school. Someone in Mark Williams's school? Nope.
So there's a couple in the chat, Leonard, that are really interesting as well.
Okay.
Maes y Dderwen, I think it is.
So, ni rhywun Maes y Dderwen, os rhywun yn Maes y Dderwen? Maes y Dderwen, can you ask the question that's in your chat?
Shall I read it out, Leonard?
Yeah.
So they're asking, what simple things can we do at school to make a difference? I think that's a really good question. So there are lots of things you can do at school to make a difference. You can make sure your school is buying the right things. So it's buying recycled paper, for example. It's not buying things in plastic bottles. It's making sure that its suppliers don't wrap things in plastic for no reason. You can also do things like you can make sure that you're learning all about things like palm oil, which are often produced by cutting down rainforests in order to make farmland for palm oil. So you can ask your teachers to look into where the products used at school come from and make sure they don't buy the ones that are cutting down the forests elsewhere in the world. And in the government, we'll be making sure we do that centrally as well to help them.
Great. Okay, I know that Tavern Spite has a question as well. They say it's a good question, so we'll have to judge this. Who's in Tavern Spite? Who's got a question?
Our question was, are we developing or do we have an alternative for palm oil?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So palm oil is a really useful oil and it's used in all kinds of things. We don't have a substitute for it exactly, but what we do have are places that produce palm oil without deforesting. So places where palm oil naturally grows. So what you can do is you can make sure that you buy products with sustainable palm oil. You know the word sustainable. So renewable palm oil that's grown in the right place without cutting down rainforest or other forests in order to do it. And we're working really hard with the government here and the government at the UK level to make sure that those products will be properly labelled in future, so you'll be able to easily tell which one is which.
So,
and that was a very good question, by the way. I think that gets good marks for a good question.
Yeah. Now we've got another question from St. Francis Catholic School. Would you like to ask the question? It's in the chat. Is that okay?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
No, St. Francis Catholic School. Wait a minute. I think, well, it may be, do you know what, Julie? We've got things going on Teams, on Zoom and on YouTube. So it may be that they're coming in on a different platform. So I'll read it out. What do you think the future will look like if we're able to sort out climate change?
So that's a really good question, isn't it? So what we hope is that we can stop climate change getting any worse than it is now. So that's the first thing. So we don't have massive sea level rises and the climate doesn't heat up. But already we have significant climate change. Already we have 1.1 degree of warming, and you know that we're trying to keep it below 1.5. I hope that in the future we'll actually be able to reverse it. So we'll actually be able to plant enough trees and restore enough of nature to be able to go back down below 1% warming. That would mean that our Arctic ice caps could start to reform, for example. But that's a long way off at the moment. We're really struggling to keep it below 1.5. And you guys are the future. You're the ones who need to put the pressure on to make sure that people like myself and Elena do the right thing, to make sure that when you grow up to be our age, you're the people who are putting it back.
Diolch, Julie. We have a question from Ysgol Shannon as well. Can you ask a question? I don't know if you can ask the question.
Yes. Will milk eventually come in glass or large bottles instead of small plastic bottles?
So that's an excellent question. I really, really want to make sure that that can happen for you. One of the things that Eluned and I will be doing in the Welsh Government is talking about the way that we buy things, the procurement policy it's called, the way we buy things. And the way the government buy things has a big influence on that. So one of the things I hope you'll see over the next year or so is that your milk will come in glass bottles and not in plastic ones. I'm not sure if there'll be large glass bottles, but glass all the same, because as you know, glass can be reused, and reuse is better than recycle. Reuse, then recycle. So we'll be working on doing that as fast as we possibly can, and it really helps if you write to us and ask us to do that as well. So I encourage you all to do that.
Well, that's a good one, because that's what we're really trying to do today, Julie, is to make sure that these people actually become active, that all of these people, this is a challenge today, and they've already said that they're going to take a challenge on, lots of different challenges. We got another question from Welsh School. Is there someone there? You want to go on a question on Welsh Pool? Okay, maybe they're on a different platform, so we'll find your question. Here we go. Why do people decide to use fossil fuels? Can we live without them?
So that's a very good question too. Lots of very good questions today. I don't know where you're all getting them from. So they decide to use fossil fuels because they're very easy to use. And when we first discovered fossil fuels, we didn't know how much damage they were doing to the climate. So back in the beginning of the 20th century, the end of the 19th and 20th century, so 100 or so years ago now, everybody thought they were very clever. They produced lots of energy, which we all like to keep our lights on and run all of our machines. And they allowed us to manufacture things we'd not been able to do before. But now we know how much damage they're doing, and we also know how to use alternatives. So what we need to do now is make it just as easy to use renewable fuels as it is to use fossil fuels. And we're right now in that transition. So over the next 10 years, we really hope that we will be able to come away completely from fossil fuels here in Wales, and over the next 20 years across the world and onto renewables. But the answer is because they were so easy to use and people just didn't understand what they were doing to the planet for quite a long time. But we do understand now, and so we've got to be able to fix it.
Great. I think Mark Williams wants to ask, in our school we have palm oil, so what can we do to have questions to get rid of it?
So Mark, the best thing to do there is to make sure that you know where the palm oil is coming from and swap to sustainable sources of it. So there are countries in the world that naturally produce palm oil that don't have to deforest in order to do that. So make sure that it's coming from the right place, and try to buy products without palm oil if you don't know where it's coming from, and also write to the producers of the product and put them under pressure to tell you where it's coming from.
Great. Now then,
it's in the ice cream. I see that. It's in a lot of things, palm oil. It's a very useful thing, but that's why we've started to produce far too much of it across the world, and we've started to replace rainforests and so on to grow it. That's exactly what's happening. So we all need to understand that, and we need to rein back on some of the stuff that's not sustainable. Great. I really like ice cream, by the way, so that'd be quite a big thing for me.
Now we've got 3 final questions now. We've got one from Shannon. So can someone in Shannon ask your question? Shannon, chi'n barod I ofyn y question? If not, we'll go on to Begin. Begin School.
Would you consider helping people to buy electric cars because they are so expensive?
Yeah, so we will be doing that. We will be helping people buy electric cars. We'll be giving them a grant to do that. And at the moment, you do get a grant to buy an electric car, though it's still pretty expensive. But I think it's really important as well to make sure that we don't all buy an electric car and that we start to share them out. Because if every single one of us buys an electric car, we're going to make a different problem for the world.
That's great. Now, Julie, the last question is going to come. I think it's from. Is it from Malina in Dilys Ellis Jones School? Now, you will be interested to know, Julie, I'm sure, that she also attended COP. So if you'd like to answer her question, and then maybe you could just stay to watch her video. Is that okay?
Lovely.
So let's have a question, or Malena, Eva.
Yeah. My question is, if people buy electric cars, there's not much place to charge it because there's not a lot of people buying them at the moment.
Yeah, so the answer to that is we need to put a charging system in. Actually, there are a surprisingly large number of places already going in. And we need to do that. We need to encourage private garage owners and stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of echo. I love your Christmas jumpers, by the way. We need to do that. But also, if you think about it, the government doesn't provide petrol stations. Private individuals do that with businesses. So we need to encourage businesses to come forward and provide electric charging points as well.
That's great. Well, diolch yn fawr iawn, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Lynette, can I just answer one that's in the chat that's come in, because I think it's an important one. Somebody's asking me, if trees take in CO2, why are palm trees bad? And the answer to that is because we're cutting down ancient rainforests to clear them in order to put palm tree oil plantations in. So although they take in CO2, they don't take in anything like the CO2 that the rainforest they're replacing takes in. And also the rainforests produce an enormous amount of moisture and produce something which is a river in the air. So it's this stream of air that cools the planet. And the more of it you cut down, the less river in the air we get. And that's getting really critical. So it's true they do take in some CO2, but nothing like the sort of CO2 that comes from a virgin rainforest. So that's why.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Julie. Thank you so much. We give Julie a big clap. Everybody wave to Julie.
Lovely to be here, Lynette.
Thank you so much,
Diolch.
Julie. Those were great, and you answered all the questions brilliantly. So diolch yn fawr iawn. You may like to just stay to watch a little video by Milena and the people who went to COP. So diolch yn fawr iawn, Julie. Thank you for all your support and good luck with all the work, because we're counting on you.
Helo, Milena Gwynala dwi, a dwi'n a dwi'n aros am y tîm COP 26. COP 26 yn dasgwyr mewn arfer. COP 26 Conference of Parties, a hwn bod i drafod sut mae stopio'r newid. Mae yna dau fath o zon. Zon glas a zon fel Boris Johnson. Gwir i bobl fel ni. Dyma'r green zone a dyma'r blue zone. Yn y COP 26 heddiw. Gesiwch beth i hwn. Coeden y stwff. Bydyr ar y ochr yna ac air ar y ochr yna. yn Eisteddfod Genedlaethol i fwynhau fy hun heddiw.
Reit, wel diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'n amlwg bod Malena wedi mwynhau hunan yn cop, a diolch yn fawr iawn am gynrychioli Cymru yna, Malena. Dwi'n siŵr nathoch chi jobyn arbennig dros ar yn rhan ni. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. Now then, we're going to move on now. Next up we have Climate Cymru. Now this was an organisation that was set up to get feedback from people from all across Wales, and they're going to be telling you a little bit about what they do and how they can help you to get your voices heard by people who have the power to influence. So Claire, I think, is going to lead us here, or is that right?
Yeah, that's me. Thank you. Yeah.
Diolch yn fawr, Claire.
Oh, thank you. Right, I'm going to share my screen with you. Now, I've posted some links in chat, okay, and I'll refer to those in a bit, so don't worry about those now, but we'll talk about those in a minute. I'm just going to hopefully share my screen with you. Give me a second, I'm managing numerous programs here, so hopefully, actually let me unshare because I'm going to share my sounds with you as well. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you can see somebody stood in a very scenic looking lake there. Hopefully you can all see that. So yeah, I'm Claire and I'm from Climate Camry. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited and very, very impressed with all of the things I've heard so far, especially that video. It was fab, and I'll be watching that again. So before I tell you about the Climate Camry campaign and what we did at COP26, and of course that schools challenge, just make sure you sort of keep hold of those links there, okay, just to remind you that those are there, because I will probably lose them as I go along. So we are a climate change campaign here, based here in Wales, and we're made up of lots of different environmental groups that would be very familiar to you, like WWF, Oxfam, Size of Wales, Friends of the Earth, to name but a few. And you know, we have a lot of partners on board, but you know, those would be the big ones that maybe you're familiar with. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to take as many voices from Wales as possible to COP26 earlier this month, just to make sure our leaders and the rest of the world know, and there are no doubts that Wales cares very deeply about the impact of climate change. And so that was the plan, and we did that in lots of different ways. And we eventually took 13,500 voices with us, and that included 250 organisations, community groups, small businesses, and of course schools. We took lots of voices from schools with us too. And we spent a really long time collecting those voices, because it was really important to us that by the time we got to COP, we were able to really be able to articulate and tell our leaders exactly what was important to the people of Wales. So we collected statements from people, we collected pictures and drawings, and we collected video messages from people. And I'm going to play you a video message now, just as an example of the sort of thing that we did. Hopefully you will.
I think you should stop fooling around and start doing some money raising. Who cares about this and that? Just get rid of climate change.
Please do something. We've got to. It's urgent, you know. It's not just talk. We've got to do things to make things better.
Make some more electric cars and make them a lower price so more people can get them, to make
that the world's not warming up to save the polar bears and snow leopards.
As leaders, you need to do everything you can to unlock floating wind in the Celtic Sea.
I feel really angry about what they're doing to the climate and the trees in the rainforest because they're cutting them all down and they're making the air really toxic.
You should offer support to help set up city farms all across the country to help people access local food production.
You need to deliver transformation in transport.
You need to listen to youth voices.
I think that people should start making electric cars because they're much better for the environment, and diesel and petrol cars use the dead dinosaurs, and we're going to run out of that soon.
I don't want you to just think about my future. I want you to think about everyone's future, including the planet.
You need to recognise that marine renewables offer a key opportunity for decarbonising our electricity supplies.
No one is better than anyone else in the world.
Let's make it easy for people to get into horticulture. Let's make it easy for people to access land. And we'll show you what we can do.
Resilient communities need to be able to grow their own food, and you need to make it easier for people like me to access the land to be able to do this.
It makes me feel kind of angry at how people are treating our planet when they should know that they should treat it with respect.
So we have a very clear vision and ambition here in Wales as its farmers to be the most climate-friendly food producers in the world, but also to do that in tune with the environment, in tune with biodiversity, and in tune with our planet's future. Let's do that together. Let's grow together.
You need to take this seriously, and you need to be ambitious about making the changes that are needed.
Now that we have left the EU, there's an environmental governance gap that needs to be filled in Wales. National Trust Cymru wants you to implement strong environmental governance for Wales and the introduction of statutory targets to reverse biodiversity loss.
There is no reason to delay action.
Okay, so hopefully the sound wasn't too bad on that. I have got a few things open, but hopefully you could hear. But that was, that was quite powerful, and it was very straight talking, and that's just one of the ways that we collected and presented Welsh Voices delegates in Glasgow. And then Glasgow, and I'm sorry, I apologise, as I've made Glasgow look like a very dreary place here, and obviously the previous video showed that Glasgow is not a dreary place. But we, our main jobs while we were at Glasgow were really to make sure that Wales was well represented, and the people were represented, and civic society were well represented, and our leaders understood what the people of Wales care about. And the other job that we had was to feed information back home to us, to make sure that we felt included in what was going on, and actually that we had some last minute opportunities as well to be involved in those negotiations and to maybe influence what was going on. So every day our campaign manager Sam, who was in Glasgow, and I was not lucky enough to be there, but Sam, who was there, he would send home an email every day to as many people as possible, telling us what was going on, how it was relevant to Wales, and what we could do that day to try and help influence some of the decisions that were being made. And that could be a tweet, or sending a tweet, or an email, or something like this. So one of the other things that we did, we've heard a lot about Greta, and of course we have our own Welsh activists here, right here in Wales. And here, this is Poppy Stowell-Evans. She is chair of the Size of Wales Youth Ambassadors for Wales, and she helped us take those young voices. She's from Llanwern High School, and our youth ambassadors took part in panel discussions and in different events at COP, and really represented the voice of youth in Wales in COP. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to gather a bit of information from you, a little bit of feedback to take back to the team about how you feel about climate change now that COP is finished. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I'm going to switch to something else, which is Mentimeter, and I'm sure there's a much better way of doing this, but I did not find it. So could you possibly, in the chat, there is a link to menti.com. Can everyone see that and click onto it? If you've done it, give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, we've got, yeah, marvelous. So if you click on the link, that is menti.com. Anyone else managed to find that yet? Yeah, we still, Mark Williams, class, very good there. Who else has managed to do it? Okay, Helena has managed to do it, fantastic. All right, so excellent. Okay, so good, somebody's responded. So on the first slide, what we're asking you is, brilliant, after COP, how do you feel? Do you feel more hopeful, less hopeful, or about the same about the climate? Okay, so I'm going to leave that go for a minute. Oh, amazing. Thank you, Mark. Mark has shared that via Teams as well, so that's great. Thank you so much. So I'll let that one run for just a second. So most people are feeling more hopeful, which is great. Yeah, more hope, Tab Spider, more hopeful. Brilliant, thank you. Okay. So I'm just going to give that 30 seconds more and then we will move on. But the consensus appears to be that we are feeling a bit more hopeful about climate change than we were. Yeah, Shrinklehaven, more hopeful. Thank you. Okay, so that's probably 10 votes for more hopeful. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide now, and I hope that you see this moving and you move with me. Yes, so the next question, the final question is, what one word describes how you feel about climate change? Okay, so what that was the words that I used as well. Concerned, yeah, overwhelmed, okay, yeah. All familiar, very familiar words when we speak to young people. Great, thank you. I'm going to let this run again for another 30 seconds because I know there are at least 3 responses, if not more, that we're waiting for. So you can either choose one of the words that are already there, or you can choose your own words, but it doesn't matter. Okay, 10 seconds, 10-second countdown. Okay, so I'm going to move the slide on now, so that we can talk about the challenge. But it's clear, I think, that we are feeling a little bit more hopeful, but still overwhelmed and anxious. So there's still quite a lot of work to do, isn't there? I think. So our work isn't over then. we still have a few more COPs ahead of us, I think is fair to say. And so we want to continue to work with you to make a difference. And your school, thank you for all of those words, Mark, Tierney, thank you very much. Your school can become a climate Camry school. So please get in touch with me. I've put my contact details there to find out more about that and how our climate Camry ambassadors can work with you, your teachers and pupils to do things like deliver climate change themed assemblies and invite politicians along, and also work with some of our partners that we have in our local area who would love to work with you on that. And in the meantime, we've got a little challenge as part of the Climate Challenge Cymru. And the challenge is for everybody here, so every participant who's on this call today, to write a message to our leaders saying what action you want on climate change. Now, the links again, I've put all of those links in chat. They can be posted directly to the website. You can do that, quite quickly, or you could make a postcard that we can send to our leaders, and you can find some resources on our schools page that will allow you to do that. And if you send those to us, we will send them on. So yeah, I'm really excited to receive those. So the email address that you see there, that comes directly to me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. You can be as creative as you like. That would be wonderful, and I would love to hear from you if you want to become a Climate Cymru school and join our network.
Thank you so much, Claire. That's been brilliant. That's been really great. Now, I'm sure we can follow up and make sure everybody's got all the links and everything in the schools afterwards, but we would encourage you all to participate. So diolch yn fawr iawn, Claire, and that's been a great contribution. Now, we're moving on now, and our next discussion is really about trees. Who likes trees? Who thinks trees are important for the environment? Dwy'r o lan, pwy sy'n meddwl bod coed yn bwysig i'r amgylchedd? Da iawn. Pwy sydd wedi plannu coeden erioed? Sy'n rhywun erioed wedi plannu coeden? Do, mae rai yn ysgol Bigin wedi plannu. Na ni, nawr te, ni'n mynd i glywed wrth rhywun nesa, a ysgol Mark Williams. Ni'n gwybod pa ysgol yw Mark Williams, ond pobl ar draws Cymru yn hapus i blannu coed. Nawr, ni'n gwybod pa mor bwysig yw coed am yn amgylchedd ni, a nesa mae gyda ni Kirsten o Coed Cadw, y Woodlands Trust, a mae hi'n mynd i fod yn gweud wrthon ni pa mor bwysig yw coed i helpu'r amgylchedd a'r gwahaniaeth allwch chi wneud i helpu trwy blannu coed. So can we ask the Woodlands Trust for their presentation? Thank you very much, Claire.
Bore da. Can you see me? Wave your hands if you can.
No, we can't see you, Kirsten.
Okay. Try again.
There we
Bore
go.
da. There you go. Bore da pawb. Kirsten ydw i. Dwi'n gweithio efo Coed Cadw, the Woodland Trust in Wales. And dwi'n dod o dde Africa yn gwreiddiol. Felly dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg. Ond heddiw byddaf siarad yn Saesneg. Okay. So before I start, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. How many of you have actually touched a tree? So you can put it in the chat, you can wave your hand, that's great. Loads of you, I can see loads of you have touched a tree. Great, I'm so glad you're out there and touching the trees. My next question is, how many of you got a tree in your garden? I'm not sure if they'll, there's not that. Some people, it's not as many people, right? Okay. And how many of you know that trees are in danger? Okay, some of you, so it's even less, but quite a few. Okay, well, I'll begin then. So I just need to share my screen. Make sure everything is in order. Right, so I can't see you now. I'm just going to move this up. Okay. So here we are, the climate challenge. We're in crisis. And what is this crisis? Well, of course, the scientists are telling us that there are large storms. We can even see them. The climate is changing from satellite positions. They look rather big. They look really regular. But just like I asked you, how many of you have felt a tree? My challenge is also to think about, okay, well, let's reflect on how do we know for ourselves? Well, just last year, there were 2 large storms that happened one after the other, and there was tons of flooding through Pontypridd and in Mid Wales as well. I've noticed when I go into the sea in summer, I've noticed that the water is a lot warmer than it used to be. And where I come from in South Africa, that warming is so dramatic that there's not a lot of rainfall. And so there is a lot of drought now. And there are places just this year where there is high levels of water shortage and people will soon run out of water. So that's in the south of our planet. In other parts of the planet, there are wildfires, and there is a Welsh firefighter who just this last month said that there's going to soon be the same situation here in Wales if we don't start taking action. So we know the crisis. And of course, you've all heard today, we all know the causes. There's a lot of emissions of fossil fuels, and the Welsh government have also done some research and in May reported that Wales has some of the worst air quality in the UK. So our factories, our cars, our planes are all emitting carbon dioxide. And even cows, they're not emitting carbon dioxide, but they're emitting methane, which is another gas that goes up into the ozone and warms everything. And what about trees? Do trees emit carbon dioxide? Some would say no, but actually, when you cut a tree, it does. It releases carbon dioxide. Inside it, it's got carbon dioxide stored inside, and that is released every time you cut a tree. So why are we cutting trees? Well, it was mentioned earlier that 30 football pitches per minute, like Greta said, are being cut to produce space to grow trees for palm oil. And there was a question about whether, why, well, it's a tree, why shouldn't it, why do we need, what about the palm oil? Why can't that tree be a replacement for those trees? Well, those rainforests are not just trees. There's loads of other plants, animals, biodiversity that are inside there that make it unique. And the way that they produce the oxygen is really effective in supporting the stability of our planet. And why do we need palm oil? Well, if you eat a chocolate, Cadbury's chocolate, you might notice it might be in there. So start checking where your palm oil comes from. We're also cutting trees to dig holes in the ground to get coal. And we're very lucky here in Wales that these places are being shut down. So Wales is leading the way and starting to take action on stopping those trees being cut down. We also cut trees so that we can have paper and toilet paper, books. And when we're starting to cut trees down, it's not only the trees that are being affected, it's the soil. And beneath the soil, all those leaves that have gone down into the soil, they store carbon as well. So when you're starting to churn those up, that is also releasing carbon into the atmosphere. Some of our largest trees that have been storing carbon for years and years and years are being cut down. So that is contributing to the cause. And what effect does this have? Well, we know we've spoken about flooding, we know about wildfires, We know about all the changes that are happening for us. We're losing some of our homes, but what about wildlife? We're starting to lose a lot of our wildlife. Some of these animals rely specifically on really old trees. Some of them won't exist anymore without that. If you cut down some of the oldest trees, you'll lose hundreds and hundreds of species, particularly oak trees, for example. They rely 2,300 species rely on just one oak tree alone. So if you start cutting them down, you're going to start losing some of these species. And if you're going into a woodland and cutting trees down and churning up the soil, there's important bacteria and mycorrhizals that help start the food chain, which leads to other animals starting to be affected. So if there's no food for them, they're not able to survive. For example, our research with our nature's calendar has found that the scientists have found that oak trees, their leaves are coming out a little bit earlier, 6 days earlier. But that's a lot for a bird, because once the oak tree's leaves come out earlier, the caterpillars are coming out earlier because they're sensitive to the temperature. And then that means the birds have to lay their eggs earlier in order for them to have the food to feed their chicks. And if they don't do that, we're going to start seeing less and less of them. And this is happening for our great tits, our blue tits, and pied flycatchers. So it's affecting not just us, but all the biodiversity in the world. And of course, we have a solution. There's solutions for various things. Our plastics, people have been mentioning, eco cars, but we have a natural solution right on our doorstep. It's called a tree, as George Monbiot said. So I've got a little video here about how exactly that works.
The world is getting warmer. Each decade is hotter than the last, as we continue to add heat-trapping greenhouse gases to the atmosphere at an alarming rate. The impact is more complex than rising temperatures and melting polar ice caps. It's changing the world around us, causing extreme weather across the globe, storms, flooding, and drought. We're in a race against time to fight the effects of climate change and reduce the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And that's where trees come in. They have a major role to play in
Oh, Kirsten, we're never going to find out what major role they're going to play in.
atmospheric carbon dioxide, releasing oxygen and locking up the carbon until the tree eventually dies and decays or is burnt. Some of the carbon from falling leaves enters the woodland soil and is stored there for the long term, making the entire woodland ecosystem an important carbon store. Photosynthesis is powered by light and uses carbon dioxide and water to make glucose. Light hits the leaves. Carbon dioxide enters through the stomata on the underside of the leaves, and water is transported to the leaves from the roots up the trunk. Chlorophyll, a green pigment in the chloroplast of leaves, sets off a reaction between the CO2 and the water using energy from the light. The result is glucose, used by the trees to grow, and oxygen released back into the atmosphere as a waste product. The carbon atoms end up inside the glucose and become the building blocks the trees use to grow. It forms the trunk, branches, leaves, and roots, a solid tower of carbon providing a lifeline to thousands of species. Native woods and trees are our allies in the fight against climate change. We need to find the space for them to grow and thrive, locking away carbon for generations to come and safeguarding our planet for the future.
There you have it. Our trees are a natural solution.
Thank you, Kirsten. I wondered if you could talk about the challenge you think
well, that's what I'm going.
Is that
yes.
okay?
So the challenge that we've got today is protect your trees, your ancient trees. We are helping restore our Celtic rainforests, and for you in schools, you can start your challenge. This is what you can do. You can be part of the solution. Explore outside. Go to our online website, order some trees. You might want trees that are hedges. You might want trees that bring in birds, and you might want trees that give you food. You can plan how to do this. We've got a special Tree Tools for Schools website, which can help you. So this could help you a planning planter. And we also provide you with help and advice for your teachers. So here you go.
Successful tree planting is all in the planning. Knowing what you want to achieve and choosing the right location for your trees is really important. Get your students interested early on too. Log on to Tree Tools for Schools. Our online planting planner makes tree planting simple, and you can map and print out your plan. Tree Tools is full of helpful hints and advice, and the children will love using it. Planting your trees in a sunny spot away from the hustle and bustle of school life gives your saplings the best start. Next to the football pitch or in the shade beneath larger, older trees are places to avoid. Do your sums. Measure the school grounds and work out how much space is available and where trees should be planted. It's a great interactive maths lesson, teaching teamwork and problem solving too. We have a variety of tree packs in different sizes. Remember, you can apply more than once, so start small, find your tree planting feet and grow your project over time. Getting your whole school community on board is important. Who will look after the trees? Have you made your maintenance team or contractors aware so they don't damage the saplings once they're planted? Prepare the ground by mowing, strimming and weeding, and make sure you have enough metal trowels or spades suitable for children. Your trees can be stored for up to 2 weeks until you're ready to plant. Open up the packaging, store the saplings upright and sheltered from frost and wind. A safe space outdoors is best, but a shed would be okay too. If the roots look like they're drying out, spray them with water. Don't worry. There might seem a lot to think about before you apply for your trees, but trust us, time spent planning now will save time later and ensure your trees get the best start in their new home.
We love trees!
There you have it. That is my challenge for you and your school, to plant trees, because every tree counts. I have noticed that we've got some questions in the chat.
Great. We have a question from Sangor School.
Yes. What was that website? We missed it. Well, here we go.
That was a question.
That wasn't our question. Sorry.
Uh-huh. So I've got 3 websites there. The Woodland Trust Big Climate Fight Back, where you can find a link to where you can get your free trees. And then there's the free tools for schools, Tree Tools for Schools, where you can get help on resources. If you're looking for Welsh resources, you can email me and I can send you some. And we're working on turning that into a bilingual website. So, right, other questions?
That wasn't our question, sorry.
Okay.
We didn't mean to say that, sorry.
That's okay.
Do dead trees take in CO2?
Dead trees have CO2 locked inside them. So if they left on the ground to rot, that CO2 will go into the ground. So not only is it important for us to keep those dead trees on the ground, it's important for the biodiversity as well. So there's a lot of special beetles that like to lay their eggs in dead trees, and that increases the biodiversity in the woodland. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Da iawn, thank you. Any more
Any-
questions? Ysgol Dilys Ellis Jones, they're very enthusiastic.
Yes, they are.
Our question is, what's the best kind of trees to plant?
Okay, so it's really important that we plant a variety of trees, right? And where we plant them is important as well. We have to have the right tree in the right place for the right purpose.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to grow some trees to make timber because we need our houses. So there needs to be special places for those to be planted. And sometimes we need trees that provide us with food and also provide us with a shelter. So hedges are important. So it depends on where you're planting and what you're planting for. So there's lots of different trees have lots of different purposes. So all trees are important. And what's about climate change as well, because the climate is changing, our trees are changing in response to them. So not all of our trees are going to survive. So it's important to plant a range of trees, lots of different kinds. So because we don't know what's going to survive in the future.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Now then, we're running a little bit behind. Ni chydig tu ôl I amser, but Kirsten, thank you very much. Now, who's going to get in touch with Kirsten to ask for trees so you can plant them in your schools? Yeah? Well, we will send you some information after this and make sure you know where you can go to collect your trees. Is that okay? Now let me show you how good I am at plants. There we are. That's mine. But look at this one. So that just proves that you've got to look after these things and make sure that you know what you're doing, and Kirsten can tell you and give you tips on how to keep these alive. Now, Tavan Spite, sorry, you're going to have to leave us, but we're going to move on very quickly. Diolch yn fawr, Kirsten. Thank you for your contributions today. We're going to move on now. We've only got one little session left, and that's the Surfers Against Sewage. And we've got Anna here from Surfers Against Sewage, who can tell you all about how you can get involved with keeping our coastlines tidy. So Anna. Have we got Anna with us? Still no Anna. Let's have a look now. Anna is here. Oh, sorry, Anna's had to leave. Nope, I think that might be a different Anna. Anna from Surfers Against Sewage. So, yeah. Okay, oh, well, it's a real shame, but what she was going to ask was, can we have a challenge to help tidy up our beaches or our riverbanks? So there's lots of opportunities for us there. And we all talked about the pollution in the seas and the plastics in the seas, didn't we? So do you think, and I know I can see the children from Llangors Lake, you've got a lake, haven't you? So you could go and look for rubbish around the lake, couldn't you? And see if you could do some litter picking there. Although I think the people around Llangors Lake are very tidy. So we're going to just move on now to our final thing, which is the challenge. Okay, so the challenge is, what are you going to do to help the environment? So hands up if you're going to sign Sky's petition to ban plastic toys on comics and magazines. Hands up, do it all, Anne. Yeah, can you do that? That's excellent. Good. Hands up if you're going to get involved to organise a local cleanup, maybe around your school or by the beach or by a river. Very good. Who, now this is a bit more difficult, who's going to write to leaders to let you know what what you really care about and what you want them to change. And we've had lots of ideas there today, haven't we? You going to do that as well? Excellent. And who is going to apply for some trees, so you can plant your own trees? Os rhywun yn mynd I ofyn am coed, da iawn, a chi'n gallu plannu eich coed eich hunan. Well, thank you so much for getting involved, and I'd be more than happy to come along and see you planting your trees in your school. So you can make a big difference. And I think that's the message today, is that this is really about you taking responsibility and understanding that you can make the difference. So, oh gosh, Llangors Lake have already planted 212 trees. Wow, that's an amazing achievement, a true eco school there. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Now, thank you so much. Now, what I'd like to do now is to make sure that when you do all these things, that you document your work and you tag us on social media and you share your videos and your photos on at Climate Challenge Cymru. Will you do that for us? So whenever you do anything with the environment, you tag us in and we will share your everything with everyone around Wales. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Now we're going to finish up by showing you a video sent by Ysgol Gymraeg Bryn Siarfel, who are showcasing their work with the Global Walk project. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Gawn ni weld. Mae Ysgol Gymraeg Bryn Siarfel wedi gwneud gwaith hynod, a gen I watch eu fideo nhw nawr. Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn am Ysgol Bryn Sierfel am wneud cymaint o waith arbennig. Fi'n mynd I ofyn I Anna, I'm just going to ask Anna very brief things from Surfers Against Sewage to tell us how we can help. We've massively run over. I'm sure these children are very hungry now, Anna, but thank you so much for joining us. I wondered if you could just tell them where they can contact you and what help they can be in this challenge. Diolch yn fawr, Anna. Anna, are we still having trouble? Anna's still muted. Oh, Anna's video is not working. Okay. Anna, can you talk? Still muted. Okay. I think we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Anna, for coming today. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd a diolch am wneud y challenge. Okay? Hwyl fawr I chi gyd. Thank you so much for joining us today. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Okay, right, good.
Cadwch mewn cysylltiad. Let us know what challenges you're going to do. Bye-bye.
Ta! Ta!
Diolch yn fawr I ti.
Ta! Ta!